Hello, everyone. Shavua Tov. Good to be back. Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs. We did one session on its connection to the Haggadah, and in the the Haggadah, because it was right after Pesach, and a relatively not so known, that wasn't phrased well, but a not so well-known custom, Sephardic Mizrahi custom to read Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, at the Seder itself, and why at least one medieval rabbi thought that was the case. That led us to look at one of the verses about Pharaoh's chariots, Pharaoh's horses, and that brought us to the Midrash, and then another example of Midrash. And we saw, to remind you, two kinds of two genre of Midrash here in particular. We saw three. One kind is where different traditions of allegorical understanding of the Book of Song of Songs are found in rabbinic literature, Talmud, and other midrashim. Another one is Shir Hashim Rabbah, Song of Songs Rabbah, which is it's all concentrated in one place. This overwriting of the text of the biblical text to create an entirely new text in order, but even more so, it's done in the Targum, in the Aramaic translation, where that's the translation. The translation of the text incorporates all sorts of midrashic elements. And we're going to see those two things today, the latter two, Shir HaShivshim Rabbah and the Targum. But first, we're going to look at one of the more raunchier texts, I would say. The truth is, when I took another look at this at the title, I don't think anybody would rate this X anymore. Things have changed before. If you might remember, I seem to remember in my visits from Israel to the United States in the 80s and seeing what was on HBO and Showtime, and seeing movies that, movies. Yes, I mean the goalpost has changed over the years as to what we consider to be, I think, an R rating or even a PG rating for that matter. But this is the kind of text today, which really had probably people thinking, those that perhaps opposed Rabbi Akiva, in saying, why would this possibly be considered sacred literature if this is what it's about? And of course, Zakovich, and this is Zakovich's commentary, which is not accessible to those other than who can read modern Hebrew, in the Mikra Yisrael series. Zakovich, of course, speaks quite a bit about the simple contextual meaning of the as other commentators do as well, of the text, of the biblical text. And then he doesn't really bring rabbinic commentary in his commentary. He wants to just go for the pshat, but he does give us an introduction to something called, that we're going to look at today, a particular literary genre which was not usually thought of as Israelite, and that is the wasf, WASF, thought in many cases to be a purely Arabic literary genre that has to do with describing a woman's body with using nature, animals, flora and fauna, and of course, it turns out that this is a far more ancient kind of literature that we find both in Mesopotamia and in Egypt, and then afterwards in Greek literature as well. And not so much in biblical literature, but this is an example of it, where a woman's body is described step by step. We have an interesting example of something like it, but it's not from biblical, it's from post-biblical literature, something called the Genesis Apocryphon, which was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I don't think we won't really have time to go into today. But there it gives a very detailed description of Sarah's beauty. We only hear that Sarah was very beautiful. Okay, but before we jump in today, did anybody have any questions in general based on what we did last time, if anybody can even remember? I could barely remember what we did last time. Okay, So the cantor is not with us. Had the cantor been with us today, I would have asked him to chant, perhaps. But for those that can follow the Hebrew, please try to do so. And I'll ask James, if you would, read the English for us.
Okay.
I don't know if a new it should say at the top. I had asked Madalena to change the text. This is chapter 4, verses 1 through 7. I don't know if that got on your sheets.
No, I have it. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So this is, and by the way, this is in what I said before. This is the kind of book that is absolutely fine to skip around because it's made up of different poems that have been woven together, sometimes in a strong way, sometimes in a weak way. This particular poem happens to be connected to the previous one in the fact that it speaks about military things and heroes. But that's not the topic. The topic is what we're going to read now. Go ahead now, James.
Ah, you are fair, my darling. Ah, you are fair. Your eyes are like doves behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats streaming down the Mount Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of ewes climbing up from the washing pools. All of them bear twins, and not one loses her young. Your lips are like a crimson thread. Your mouth is lovely. Your brow behind your veil, like a pomegranate split open. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built to hold weapons, hung with 1,000 shields, all the quivers of warriors. Your breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle, browsing among the lilies. When the days blow gently and the shadows flee, I will take me to the mouth of the mirth, to the hills of frankincense. Every part of is fair, my darling. There is no blemish in you.
Okay. Has anybody read this piece before? Does it sound familiar? Okay. So let's start now. Let's start first with the people who've seen this for the first time. First impressions, and then I'm going to ask those that have seen it before how they've traditionally understood this, or perhaps the way that it was written out line by line helped them understand it differently. But let's start with you, James. You want to take first crack? What's your initial reaction?
Uh, it's a very typical love poem. It doesn't sound something that would be like in a Jewish text that much. Sounds more like something from a Greek uh,
Hedonistic, yeah.
of that time. One of the things I'm just reading a book about the Greeks anyway right now, but the whole idea of writing before, when people could write, the original writing was always based on either financial things or on laws. And once we started to have like really, the Greeks were like the first ones that actually used writing for literature purposes to express things, express ideas versus other cultures. And I just think, like I said, this is not your Jewish text that deals with laws, but really, emotions and thoughts and beauties.
Yeah, indeed, there are similarities between this text and Greek texts, but also interesting, which preclude the Greek texts are the Mesopotamian texts that use this kind of style and the Egyptian. The difference being is that says Zakovich, that in the Mesopotamian text, it's always the description of a goddess.
Right.
She's the one that gets that goddess. For those of you who studied with me before Lilith, the topic of Lilith, there's that wonderful piece that we have, which is 4,000 years old, that is assumed to be Lilith, who's in this beautiful shapely form with with these breasts, uncovered breasts, and these horrible feet with claws. That's what I'm thinking of. But in Egyptian literature, you do have it about a woman as well. Here, so yeah. Now, so then the question is, James, is that because it's less found in Jewish literature, or those of us that grew up in Jewish America, or those that grew up in yeshiva, perhaps we weren't exposed to those Jewish texts, right?
Well, partly, I think we weren't exposed to Jewish texts, But I also think partly because when probably this was written, the people who wrote this were exposed to certain outside texts,
Ah, okay, so you'd like to say that perhaps it's that influence.
the influence around them.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that kind of assumes that we wouldn't go there ourselves, right? Had it not been for those bad influences, is that kind of what you're saying?
No, no,
Okay,
no. I think that they just have the ability at that point to
okay,
write that they were influenced.
right.
And that I'm just, I'm always amazed when the stuff that you're showing us, it's kind of like almost like today. I mean, there's no difference in love and emotion. I mean, the same things that drive, love today seems to be back then.
Right. Okay,
There's
so
one other thing I want to mention at the
sure.
very end. There is no blemish in you. For some reason, the thing about the etro comes to mind, like the etro has to be perfect. Uh, I found that it just came popped into my mind.
Right. And what shape is the etrog, James?
Well, I don't like
Breast-like? You can go
a,
ahead and say
pre-
it. It's an erotic
a,
shape. Of etrog is an
right.
erotic shape.
But once comes to mind, like one, I remember sometimes going for looking for an etro, and when you go to the Jewish store that was selling the etros, I mean, it was a big deal. Like people who, everybody wanted that perfect etro uh, to get. It was not something you just picked out. If there was a selection to be had, you would spend, 15, 20 minutes trying to look for that perfect etro, making sure they had the pitone, the shape, you know, the uh, the rough side, the wrinkles in it and all of that.
Great. Well, thank you. Sylvia.
Yeah, thanks. What's interesting to me is like, um, okay, we wouldn't say it's like X-rated. How maybe. However, I would say that it's a very secular piece. I mean, if I were just reading it, like I didn't know it was part of it was part of our Tanakh, it's sacred. I would read it as a secular love poem.
There's no
Very
God.
old. Yeah. Oh, no God, except the only thing that for me that leads me to perhaps the God was um, where lost it now. Um, where you're not there's no blemish because who doesn't have a blemish somewhere besides God?
Hmm.
I mean, that's the only thing that might give me a clue if I didn't know what this was. And of course, having a Christian background, when I hear myrrh and frankincense, I immediately would think of something in the Christian literature.
So let me grab onto the tail of what you just said. Yeah, in our culture today, when we smell frankincense, especially, at least those of us that have been to those kinds of churches, which are not that many of them today, that still use frankincense, we're thinking usually of a Catholic or an Orthodox, in some cases even Episcopal church if it's a high church, and that's where our association with. That's the only time I've. But of course, these two spices are central where long before Christianity and the church to the temple.
Yeah.
Right.
These spices are central to the temple in Jerusalem and to the whole practice, the whole priestly practice. So they're very valuable materials. Incense in general around the world is a valuable material used for different reasons. It's not just to cover up the stench of the burning flesh, which of course it's that and the hair, that too. But it's also because incense induces another kind of frame of mind. It's aromatherapy. Yeah, and there's something very connected between that and erotica, right? With perfume and arousal. Yeah, okay. So Megan and then Dan, if you would share with us a little bit your impressions after you, because you've seen this text before. Go ahead, Megan.
I've seen this text only as an adult. And when you read it today, it's it's like I'm gonna say it. It's like lovely foreplay of a man to a woman. It's and done in poetic. I mean, I don't know if I want my hair to look like goats going down, but it's of the times. But it's there's absolutely no blemish in you, and the woman is, oh, you're so wonderful, man. I happen to like Song of Songs and this because as a Jew, I do believe we don't leave the body out. And we don't leave the beauty of the body out, and the beauty of sex out, and the beauty of all of that out. I can see sex as parts of everything and all of that, but I've seen, I think there's the stallion that some woman says about something somewhere about a man. So I've always liked this as an inclusion, as a religious part of Judaism, which may shock people, but I was brought up in a Christian, what would you call it? Not Christian informed, but a Christian community, or around Christian, and
Christian-ish.
Christianish, that's good. Christianish. And you know, sex and all of that was, ooh, and then during my time, it was, you just didn't talk about it. It was just terrible, terrible, and everything was terrible, terrible. And the church didn't like it, and blah, blah, blah. But so I think it's beautiful. It does have pieces in it that your teeth are like a flock of ewes. I mean, it is of the times, but to me, it's poetic foreplay for the
Great.
woman.
So in a minute, Megan, we're going to go down. I'm going to go down each line and talk a little bit more in depth about the wording and how it's used that might even make it more palatable or more attractive, or might make it more. You do raise a really interesting thing about the sexism involved, and yet you answered it yourself. Yes, in Song of Songs, the man is also described, is also what we might call objectified here. And the question is this job objectification, or is this, you know, this fuzzy area between the feelings inside and the sexual attraction and the spectrum, as opposed to this is this and this is this that we sometimes go to. Dan, you've read this probably in synagogue before, I'm guessing, or?
Well, actually, I shared a few weeks ago. The first time I encountered it, I was a freshman in college, and I was dipping into bits of Bible, Jewish and Christian, I just never seen before. I remember thinking, what's the Sermon on the Mount about? What's Song of Songs about? And I read this, and I'm struck by now, I think I was then, by just the things that are being compared to, the scale of the objects compared, is almost outlandish. It's meant to really grab your attention in talking about if this is talking about a woman's body, flocks of goats, flock of ewes, eyes like doves, breasts like fawns, neck like a Tower of David. The scale just not hits you in the face. And I remember being very struck by that when I was a teenager.
Yeah. And we won't ask you which parts you used in the end for the love letter to the woman who became your wife. We'll keep some things private here, some things undercover. So what I would like to do is to go now to read it again slowly. And this, I'm trying to do more of this because in Proverbs, it's a challenge because it's really just 2-liners, 4-liners sometimes, but to get a feeling for the paragraph and then to go back and dissect, as opposed to dissecting it piece by piece right away. So this repetition of Hinach Yafa Rayati, Hinach Yafa, the surely. So we get that repetition, very poetic, but there's another purpose it serves as well. And this gives us defines for us the literary unit. Because what's at the end of the poem? Kulach Yafa Rayati, right? Every part of you is fair. You are fair. So that's a literary device which forms what we call an inclusio or an inclusion, and everything in between is a literary unit used in narrative prose, used in poetry. is that deep in meaning? No, but an important part of studying biblical literature, any literature, I'm guessing, but biblical literature, especially poetry. So we start where he starts kind of top up, right? Well, maybe we'll see. He starts with the eyes. So your eyes are like doves. There, I don't think there's anything terribly sexual about that, but when we think of doves, I think of sharp ends at the edges. Do you know how some women today, or maybe also in movies with somebody from the Middle East, they use their makeup in such a way that it's very pointed in both directions. I see that sometimes now. I sit in a coffee shop, a coffee house in Palm Springs. I see a lot of young people that come in and out, and a lot of different eye makeup styles. But there's this style now too. I would call it a Mediterranean, a Middle Eastern kind of a style. And to me, a dove is less of a roundish kind of. I can think of eyes around, but I hear this very, and I'm thinking of who lives when this is being written. Who lives in the places? What do people look like? And we kind of know what people look like. This is before blue eyes and blonde hair were introduced into the area. There are redheads from time to time, like King David, according to some traditions, Esav, perhaps, that may have been mutations mutations of the color genes that may have. I don't know much about this, of course, but I think that's important for going forward to think of what kind of hair, what kind of eyes, and what makes something sexier when it's partially covered, right? There's that idea, and whoever in psychology, that's an idea as well. I don't remember what it's called, but this idea of partial covering. Now, and this will explain to you why, not just in the Jewish tradition, at least according to some explanations, but in other traditions, the bride is partially covered with a veil at the wedding. Or in certain parts of the world, we always interpret as saying because no other man should see her. But there's something rather erotic about that part veiling as well. And that makes it even more so. Now we get to her hair. You mentioned, Megan, well, I don't know what color your hair was once upon a time. I'm guessing this is in recent years, but Susan, did you ever have long hair?
I always wished for long hair, but my hair grows like this.
Uh-huh. Well, if you could imagine
I had it.
dark complexion, dark hair, black hair, dark brown hair, curly, what we used to call when we were younger, Hebraic curls. Hebraic curls. That my hair, I had long hair for much of my life, and it was like that as well. Very curly going down. If I just let it dry, I would even get rings, and think of that, this flowing hair down a back. It's like when you're looking at a mountainside and the herd of goats, black goats, are all coming down. Can you imagine that, even if you haven't seen it before? That it's that ripple effect of the hair. So actually something quite complimentary, right? Seen in that way, taken into context of what kind of hair. When we're thinking of people with short hair, it doesn't mean anything. When people a blonde hair, it doesn't mean anything. Well, maybe for the white sheep, but we'll get to the white sheep in a second. Sylvia, did you want to say something beforehand? No, okay. All right. So we're down to the hair like a flock of goats. And why streaming down Mount Gilad of all places? Anybody? Does anybody know where Har Gilad is? Har Giladi? It's on the other side. It's on the Transjordan, the east bank of the Jordan River, the area where the 2.5 tribes settled. You might remember from the book of Numbers, they're about to go in the land, 2.5 tribes, Ephraim, Gad, Reuven, and Chatzim, and half of Menashe come to Moses. They say, listen, we got lots of flocks, right? The land here on this side of the Jordan is much better for us. We really want to, this is where we want to be. This is according to the story. How it developed historically, I'm sure, is quite different. And then Moses says, okay, but you have to come with us and you have to be the shock troops when we conquer the land with Joshua. You've got to be that. Then you can go back and live in peace on the other side, because lest somebody think they were just doing that to avoid war. That's where there is lots of pasture land. So it makes sense in biblical times to somebody, where are the hills of pasture? Pasture, I think, means this, but the grazing hills par excellence, Har Gilad. So it uses something from the reality of the time to bring it home. Now we get to the teeth. Now, Megan, you didn't sound like you like the teeth so much, but what are the teeth likened to? A flock of ewes. Ewes are baby lambs or she lambs. Um, and they're lambs, not goats. Goats are dark. Lambs are white. And when they cut the wool, what do they do first? They bring them into the pools, into the water to wash them. And when they come up, they're they're white like lambs. Isn't there some expression like that? Where's Richard? Where's my expression guy? Um, where's Richard when I need him? Like a lamb's fleece, isn't there? Is it white as snow, or fleece was white as snow? Am I remembering something from? Yeah, please feel free to unmute and help me out here, folks. You know that my memory
Mary
is
had a
What,
little lamb.
yeah. So
or fleece is white as snow. That is
right.
that is
So
something.
what a great compliment. Her teeth were white without going to the Shinanit, you know, the teeth person. But not only are they white, what else? All of them bear twins. That seems strange, right? So the word for twins is, this may not be a great translation. All of them are matching each other. From tu'um is a matching. Even teeth, even white teeth. Isn't that what our parents paid so much in orthodontia bills for us to have, right? Didn't work with me so much, but yes, Sylvia.
Me, neither me. But in a culture where keeping your teeth must have been pretty rare into adulthood. Doesn't happen all the time because of different kinds of dental hygiene and whatever we eat, and also war. So that's a pretty high compliment. That
Absolutely. So they're white as the fleece. They match each other. They're matching. And one more thing. What's the last part of this? And not one, because it's gone into the metaphor, right? It's in the world of the metaphor. The metaphor, the sheep that are washed and they become white. In the metaphor, they're giving birth to twins is not a good translation. They're all matching each other. And in the metaphor, what else? None of them get lost. None of them die. Exactly to your point, Sylvia. Right? Exactly to your point. So it looks a little bit different now, Megan, right?
It does, but it still goes along with the idea of the times of, it looks much, it's poetry, but it's how you would describe someone you love, whatever their hair, you just describe all how beautiful you are.
Right, except for that last part you said there, as much as
Yeah.
I like it, is kind of a modern or a postmodern way of looking at things, which is that, oh, you're beautiful just the way you are. That's actually not, I don't think that's what this is saying. You are objectively beautiful, young lady. You are like, I can prove it. You're like this in nature. You're like this in that world. You're like this in architecture. So I don't, you were, I think you're giving it a relative spin of relativity here.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that I see that here. Do you hear what I'm saying? By your expression, no, I'm not communicating well.
We'll keep going.
Well,
Yeah, I can see how it's, how we see beauty and the different metaphors for it.
right, but these metaphors, though, okay, that's
We'll keep going.
yeah, Sylvia.
I think it's interesting because in relatively speaking, because in the modern world, you would say, you might not say your hair is like a flock of goats. You'd say your hair is, um, you'd parse it down to describe the hair individually, not as a flock of goats, as a beautiful white or a beautiful whatever color, clean. Or especially with the teeth, you'd say your teeth are white and clean and beautiful, and you wouldn't say them as use, because frankly, that I for a modern day reader, I would say that was pretty confusing.
Okay. A lot of it has to do not only with modern and ancient, but also what do the people do? Where do they live? The geography, the vocation people take from yeah, great. So going down now, we move from her teeth to where? Where are we moving now? Her lips, her mouth area. So her lips are like a crimson thread. Crimson also used, so Sylvia, if the mere the more the levona, as we're going to see later down, the two incenses also from the world of the sacrament of the priestly world is the scarlet or crimson thread, made from a little bug, by the way, which its name is called something biblicus. That's the name of it in Latin, its name. And so your mouth is lovely. That's interesting there. You know, but the way the Hebrew here is, and this is a little challenging for those that read Hebrew, umidabra na'ava. Na'ava is something beautiful, but the word ledaber, the root daber, is to speak with a mem before, and this is the only place in the Hebrew Bible where where midaber is the place from where the words come from. And then there's your brow behind your veil. Brow is a challenging word here. Brow is taken because of the story, the same words in the story of Yael and Sisra, where she pounds a tent stake through his forehead, if you remember that story in Judges. But here, others have posited that it probably better to understand it as cheeks, or what is this here? Is this your cheekbone? Is there another word for this area here? L'chaim? What are rosy? Cheeks, right? So if you understand that the brow, instead of brow, the cheeks are behind your veil, they gleam like pomegranates split open. That's the rosiness of the cheeks. That makes a little bit more sense. Right? Rosy cheeks. Of course, I don't know that anybody would say, "Oh, you're so beautiful. Your face is as beautiful as a broken open pomegranate." Right? That sounds a little weird. Again, depending on where you're coming from, what you have. But there's a contrast of colors here as well. Is white, bright red, the scarlet thread, the pomegranate, very bright, right? Now we go from nature to architecture. Right? Your neck is like a tower. There's another verse in Song of Songs also that compares the neck to the tower, not to the Tower of David, and we don't know. Flat and simple, we don't know what this is referring to. What Zakovich says is obviously referring to a famous place, whether it was built by David, whether it was the honor of David, whatever it is. There is a Migdal David today in Jerusalem. People, have you visited before the Tower of David in Jerusalem? Do you know when that is from? It's Ottoman. It's just a few hundred years old. It's not all that old, that many years old. The wall around it, there's parts of it which are Crusader walls, which are earlier, but that tower is Ottoman. And that, of course, is the city of David was not there at all in ancient times. It was much further down the hill. But in any case, this is talking about. So, what do we say of somebody that, oh, your neck is as beautiful as the Empire State Building? Probably not, but okay. And then it gets even more complicated because that same tower is built to hold weapons, 1,000 shields and quivers of the warriors. This is the connection to the previous poem because it talks about heroes, military heroes. And yet, on the other hand, this is a little bit harder to understand. This is where the gap is greater, Sylvia, the gap that you've been talking about before, and Megan as well, between how we consider it to be something beautiful and what the poet feels is something beautiful, this place. But let's go, Sylvia and then Megan.
It's so interesting because one of the one thing that I see a lot in literature and also in art is a long, thin neckline is almost always associated with a beautiful woman or a beautiful dancer. I just did something just the other day about that. So it's the image, except he uses the whole tower. I mean, the poet uses the whole tower, where we would be talking about the long, beautiful neckline rather than a tower.
Yeah, Megan?
My first thought when I read this, your neck is like the Tower of David, is Nefertiti with her long neck.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, once again, sorry, I missed it.
Is the Egyptian Nefertiti with her long neck and all the rings around her
Yeah.
long neck. It felt like it was a Jewish
A version of that. I think that's probably right as well. I think this is probably talking about the jewelry. Otherwise, I don't know what's beautiful. It's hard to imagine what's beautiful about all that metal stuff. But then going from the neck, and we know we're going the head top down, going down the neck too, of course, what attracts most men and maybe other women as well, based on how we grew into this world, how we were nurtured into this world when we were infants. We're attracted to the breasts. The breasts are like two fawns. Now, what's an ofar? A fawn? They're like little deer. They're in Israel today. There's it's called emekes. They're called tzvaim also. They're that whole family of deer, gazelle, antelope. They're all kind of different sizes of the same thing, but these beautiful, graceful little animals. And I think that's the idea here. And imagine there's two of them, and not just are there two of them, but what happens as he goes in? They are each they're twins of a gazelle to show that they're similar to each other. They're of equal measurements. We'll get more into that in the Midrash as well. Right. And it's almost as if they blow in the wind. It's hard to understand this one exactly. Okay. And then he keeps going down further though, and this is where you get between R and X. I think it used to be you could see breasts in R, but if you're going to see below that, below the waist, it maybe had an X rating. I don't know if I just assumed that was the case or I made it up, but that's probably what is being inferred here as well. The every part of you beforehand is the hill of frankincense, the mount of myrrh, the private areas of the woman as well. And there's another section that I didn't bring, which I thought had I decided to bring just more erotic places. There's the section that talks about Gan Na'ul Achoti Kala. You're like a locked garden. I remember Yair's Izakovich's commentary there. A locked garden meaning that you weren't allowed, perhaps not allowed to have sex before marriage or at any a time of the month or whatever. A locked garden, Gan Na'ul. Okay. Any other comments on the simple or the contextual meaning of this passage?
I just have a question more for the women. How do you guys react? To this poem? I mean, because this really talks about the beauty of the woman. I mean, it's very objectified.
I don't find it as much objectified as poetified. It's put into poetry. It is of the times and of the people, but it's I don't find it objectifying. It may be to other women.
I find that to me, it's to answer your question, James, it's much more, I would say, not objectified, but yeah, maybe, but not as I don't find it an erotic love poem, whereas other poems in Song of Songs are very erotic, both ways, men to women and women to men. And this I do not find at all. I find it kind of stilted in some way that they're trying to say something, but not say it. That's my read of it.
But I think that's what makes it a poetry for me, is they're saying something, but they're not saying something. So you're sort of reading into all these metaphors and images and all of that.
Hey, Susan?
I can't get past the sense that this is like a stream of consciousness. And for me, it's just all over the place and doesn't quite hit the mark.
Do you see the progression from the top of the body downward?
Yes, it's like a laundry list. So I'm not so taken with it.
Okay.
I have a question. Is this poem more about beauty, or is it a standard for beauty at that time? What
Ah.
we see as beautiful.
James, I want to comment on this question and also what you said before is that it's one poem. It's just one poem, and we have been given this poem amongst many other poems, so we can certainly look at it by itself, but probably we should ask those kinds of questions in the context of other poems as well, right? In the same way that we wouldn't judge a poet today by one poem, or even an author today by one book that they read. So and judge, I don't mean good or bad, I mean in any way to make assumptions. So to my mind, this is literally just a man looking at the woman he loves and describing his attraction to her by comparing her body to what's around him as well, the beauty around him. It's a celebration of beauty. Yes, Megan, and then we should go on, okay?
Yeah, right. The thing I think that gets it for me is, you are fair, my darling, you are fair. It's one man talking to his beloved. And then you have the poetry. So that set the stage for me.
Okay. So let's go on now to the Midrash, and we will see at least 6 different ways of understanding just the breasts. I've just focused here on the breasts. So Daniel, if you would.
Your 2 breasts are like 2 fawns, twins of a gazelle that graze among the lilies. Your 2 breasts, these are Moses and Aaron. Just as the breasts are the splendor and the glory of a woman, so too Moses and Aaron are the splendor and the glory of Israel. Just as the breasts are the beauty of the woman, so too Moses and Aaron are the beauty of Israel. Just as the breasts are the honor and praise of a woman, so too Moses and Aaron are the honor and the praise of Israel. Just as the breasts are filled with milk, so too Moses and Aaron fill Israel with Torah. Just as the breasts, everything that the woman eats, the baby eats and suckles from them, so too, all the Torah that Moses, our master, studied, he taught to Aaron. That is why it is written, Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord. The rabbis say he revealed to him the ineffable name.
That's probably just an addition that I'm guessing that the scribe added in counting that because he knew the tradition from another place. But it has to do with what was distilled, how the 2 leaders distilled the word of God they got from the word that they got from God into what they spoke to the people itself.
Okay. I just had trouble parsing it as I was reading it. Just as the breasts, one of them is not larger than the other, so it was with Moses and Aaron. That is what is written, that Moses and Aaron, and it is written that Aaron and Moses. Moses was not greater than Aaron, and Aaron was not greater than Moses in Torah. Rabbi Abba said, this is analogous to a king who had 2 fine pearls, and he placed them on the pans of a balance scale. This one was not greater than that one, and that one was not greater than this one. So too Moses and Aaron were equal. That is what the prophet Samuel said, the Lord who produced Moses and Aaron. That is, your 2 breasts, these are Moses and Aaron.
You know, this is how I imagine this part happening. What was the play? It's totally fictive. It's totally from my imagination. A bunch of rabbis are around the table. Maybe it's with a new groom or something, and they're drinking. And this is like a drinking game where somebody says, what do you say about the two breasts? Well, the two breasts are beautiful. That's the most. What do you say about? Well, they're splendid. And as they drink more, well, the suckling is like this. It's like it almost feels like that. It's a collection of different traditions. Is it the hand of is it one person's hand, or was it added to? Hard to know, especially with that interpolation there about the ineffable name. But you could see how much the Midrash can do on just one little element of that poem, the breasts. Yeah. And again, how it became sacred. So in answer to everybody's questions before, the comments before, how could this be part of Jewish literature, James, right? Somebody said, no, you're not, it's not about the real breasts, it's about Moses and Aaron. To which you would say, James, sure it is. Yeah, but you keep on thinking that. Okay, Rabbi, you keep telling us that. Yeah, we really believe you, you know? Okay, now we get to the Targum, which is the Aramaic translation. If you were here last time, remember that I said it's the opposite of a literal translation. It's a extremely embellished translation. It's a rewriting of the biblical text, almost to try to include every single thing they could think of that connected to these 7 verses. This is different because it's not just about my selection here is different in purpose because it's different literary genre. This is Aramaic translation, which was uttered in the synagogue as it was written, perhaps we don't know for sure, and as it was read, not written. And the other one is just focusing on the two breasts. So Dan, I'm going to ask you to do this as well because this is rather midrashic in its context. So, and I numbered the verses to make it a little easier here.
On that day, King Solomon sacrificed 1,000 burnt offerings on the altar, and his offering was accepted with favor by Yud-Heh-Vav. An echo came forth from heaven, and this is what it said. How beautiful you are, O assembly of Israel, and how beautiful are those leaders of the assembly and the sages sitting in the Sanhedrin. They who enlighten forever and ever the people of the house of Israel, who resemble turtle doves, the nestlings of a dove. And even the rest of the members of your assembly and the people of the land are righteous as the sons of Jacob, who gathered stones and made a monument on Mount Gilead.
Okay, this is on the words Hinach Yafar Ayati. You hear what were the words in English was you are fair, my darling. So what the Targum does also puts it in the context of King Solomon writing this, and it happened to be the same day that's referred to in the Book of Kings. They offered 1,000 burnt offerings to the altar, and that's probably connecting to the fact that there is the incense later on from that has to do with the offering as well. And instead of going the direction of just here of Moses and Aaron, as we said, based on the breast above it, this is all the people of Israel and the leadership as well. What is beautiful about you, says the Targum, who comes from the author comes from the world of the sages, your leadership, right? First, your the assembly of Israel, the Sanhedrin, and then connects it to one of the places going to be mentioned, Mount Gilad, because of the story in Joshua, where the Israelites had to renew the covenant under the Mount Gilad. And so what he's doing here, which he's going to do in every paragraph, is connected to total intertextuality with the rest of the Hebrew Bible. Go ahead to the next one.
Well, before going on, I'm just going to question again what the intent of Targum is. Was it presented as a translation? Was it presented as an embellishment? Was it presented as a commentary or just a reimagining?
I think all those things, and each Targum is a little bit different. There's not one answer for all Targumim. Targum Onkelos, which is the most known of them because it's published printed in a rabbinic Bible, is a relatively literal translation for people who don't know Hebrew but do know Aramaic. When I say it's literally translated, because it says every time it says something like, and God did something in an anthropomorphic way, it will say it was done in front of God. It changes those kinds of things to make it theological, more from a theological point of view, more palatable. But it's meant to be a more or less literal translation because people don't know the language. In all cases, it's based on the fact that people didn't know the language. But then you have some translations where 2 lines can be translated by 8 or 9 lines. Now, does anybody think that anybody listening to that thinks, oh, that's the real translation? That's the difference between Hebrew and Aramaic, that Aramaic is that much longer in expression? No, they understood they were being given. And so for the author of those kinds of impregnated, I call them, translations, that is a rabbi saying, or a teacher saying, oh, no, the text is not, this is the real meaning of the text. What you need to know about this is, I think, because it's a one-time deal. It's not in the Beit Midrash. It's not in the study hall where people discuss back and forth, what does any verse mean? It's one authoritative figure giving the translation. So it could mean all those things, Dan, basically. Doesn't help you much. And I don't know, I'm not familiar, I'm sure Shir Hashirim, the Targum, has been studied at PhD level, our scholarly articles. I'm just not familiar with any of the literature about it to give you a better explanation.
No, that's a fine answer. There's no one answer, and that's perfect. Really, I like that. Continue.
Yeah.
How beautiful are the priests and Levites who bring your offerings and eat the holy meat, the tithe and the heave offering, and are untainted by any theft or robbery. Just as the flocks of Jacob's sheep were clean at the time they were shorn and came from the Yabok River. For none of them was obtained by theft or robbery. All of them resembled one another. They bore twins every time, and none of them was barren or miscarried.
Yeah.
So this has nothing to do with teeth. This has to do with raising flocks. And what's the story par excellence of raising flocks? Where Jacob outsmarts Laban and enlarges his part of the tribe with the business with the flecked, the sticks and the peeled sticks and the things that went on. So it's that together with the purity of the priests and the Levites, who ate their food, their truma and their maser, had to eat while they were pure. They couldn't eat it being impure, which is really only the case for priests. I'm not sure why. Untainted by it. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
And the lips of the high priest were uttering prayers before Yudhe on the Day of Atonement. And his words changed the sins of Israel, which resembled a scarlet thread, and made them white as clean wool. And the king who was at their head was full of precepts like the pomegranate, not to mention the overseers and rulers who were near the king, who were righteous and in whom there was nothing evil.
Now, a lot of things going on in this one. I'm not sure I got all of it, but one of the things is this tradition of the Seir LaAzazel, the scapegoat. When the scapegoat was thrown over the cliff, there was a scarlet thread attached to him, according to one of the traditions, that when the scapegoat was torn to pieces, then the thread would turn from scarlet to white to symbolize an actual literal playing out of the literary term or the poetic language that God will turn the sins of Israel from red to white, red being impure blood like, and white being pure. So that's as far as the scarlet thread thing is mentioned. The pomegranate thing, I think, has to do with the tradition that pomegranates are symbolic of schuyot, of merits, and these leaders are filled with merits, with mitzvahs, with merits, with good deeds. That's kind of. Did you want to say something else about this, Dan?
Rabbi?
Oh, James, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about the red thread. Is that where the Kabbalists, don't they wear that red like thread around their wrist? Is that where it comes from?
I don't know where the Kabbalah is. I don't know if it's just the from the Kabbalah Center, or I've seen that in older women selling those things at the Kotel at the Western Wall for decades now. It wasn't when I was younger though. It wasn't in the 70s and the 80s. I'm not sure exactly when it started, where it came in. My guess is it comes from some folk custom of probably a Mizrahi background, not Ashkenazic. It's nothing you saw. And then it grew, and now you see it in lots of people. Again, back to my experiences in the coffee house here in Palm Springs, seeing these young people coming in, most from LA. I see a lot of red. So you see it on movie stars, right? I think that's the influence of the Kabbalah Center, I'm guessing, but I don't really know. But that's a huge difference, though. I mean, and there's a huge gap between that and this thing that's mentioned. Yeah. Go ahead.
And the head of the academy, who was master to you, was as mighty in merit and great in good deeds as David the king of Israel. And on the word of his mouth, the world was built. And the people of the house of Israel were confident in the teaching of the law with which he was occupied. And they were victorious in war, as if they were holding in their hands all sorts of heroic weapons.
All right, so it's not about the neck. It's all about David, the tower named after David, and the military prowess, not so much as being winning wars of violence, but intellectual wars, right? Reflecting the time that this Targum was created in the society of sages. Go ahead.
You are two redeemers who are destined to redeem you, Messiah, son of David, and Messiah, son of Ephraim. Resemble Moses and Aaron, the sons of Yocheved, who are comparable to two young antelopes, twins of a gazelle. By their merit, they fed the people of the house of Israel for 40 years in the wilderness on manna, plump fowl, and the water of Miriam's well.
All right, so this is a midrash of the midrash, right? The midrash was that it's David and it's Moses and Aaron, and the midrash on the midrash is the two Mashiachim. There's the regular Mashiach and the Mashiach that comes first to announce beforehand. For those that have delved into those kinds of literature, you know, you've heard that before. And a way for the person who wrote the Targum to bring in some some ideas about the Messianic age as well, which aren't in the earlier rabbinic material that we saw. Go ahead, 6.
And all the time that the house of Israel held fast to the ways of their righteous fathers, the demons and night demons and morning demons and midday demons fled from among them, because the glorious presence of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh dwelt in the temple that was built on Mount Moriah, and all the demons and destroyers would flee from the smell of the spice incense.
All right, and you're probably scratching your head and say, how did he get there? If you turn over the page for a second, look at the 5th line before the bottom, and the shadows flee. Those are the shadows. And then Mount Mir is in Hebrew, Har Hamor. Mor is Mir, is the spice. And what's Mount Moriah? Har Hamoriah. Easy jump from there to there, but you can see a little bit. So, I don't know if anybody's written a book just on Targum of Shir HaShirim. I know there's a PhD thesis I saw named one place, but there's no way you could go through each and every paragraph. We're just looking at 7 verses here. And look how many references. Just the footnoting of this. How long will that take, right? Okay, one more, Dan.
And at the time that the people, the house of Israel, did the will of the Lord of the world, he would praise them in heaven above. And this is what he said: you are all beautiful, O assembly of Israel. There is no blemish in you.
And now, so Megan, now we're away from the physical attributes to the moral beauty, the behavioral beauty. Yeah. Well, any parting comments? I believe Targum is pronounced Tirgum. No, Mel, Tirgum is in modern Hebrew, we call it a Tirgum, but in Jewish studies, the genre of literature is called Targum, and it's spelled Targum. At least that's what I know, Mel. But thanks for the comment. Any other comments about what we just did? Yes, Sylvia.
I just want to thank you, Rabbi. It was really very interesting to me. I've read parts of Song of Psalms before, and this is, to me, pretty unique. And I like the way you brought it to us and your references. I learned so much. I do want to say, before you all leave, that Rabbi Marsha asked me to remind people that next week Rabbi Daniel Levine is starting a 3-part series on Jewish identity, like what does it really mean to be a Jew? I think it'll be very interesting. And also, in a few days, maybe a day, I don't know, you'll all be getting a survey about ALI, and would you please, 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 please respond to it. It's not that complicated, but it will help us going forward. And I would say thank you, Rabbi, for coming, and great. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Shavua Tov. Thanks for being here, everybody. Bye-bye.